It's been a very full and fascinating day to date, and we're going to continue that now for our final panel discussion, which is going to be on the topic of cultural heritage, identity and tourism, film and broadcasting. Another mouthful for you. And I'm welcoming Adam Harris to chair this. So if all the panellists who are joining Adam could take to the stage either through the ramp or up behind me, while I just do a quick introduction to Adam. He is known to many of you. He is the founder and the CEO of AsIAm, which is the Disabled Persons Organisation and Ireland's national autism charity. He's a frequent contributor to media and conferences in Ireland and overseas, and he was also appointed as a commissioner to the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission in July 2020. So thank you very much for joining us today, Adam, and looking forward to you chairing this very interesting panel discussion.
Thank you so much. And I think we're just waiting on one or two others to join us still, and then we'll get underway. Just while we're waiting for people to join us, I might just begin with a little bit of an introduction. It's great to chair this discussion, which will explore in a very broad lens culture and identity, from how disabled people's culture and identity is recognised, celebrated and supported, to initiatives to ensure disabled people have access to natural cultural institutions and monuments, through to how disabled people are portrayed in our media and popular culture. This discussion, alongside the conference theme, is key to exploring the significant contributions made by disabled people to the cultural life of the state and the barriers that still exist to accessing such opportunities, and how these barriers can at times be reinforced by a lack of representation and opportunity and the inaccurate and stereotypical portrayal of our communities within cultural settings. And I know just from the point of view of our work in AsIAm, we know that this issue is so important, both in terms of accessibility to tourist attractions and cultural institutions, but also very much in terms of public attitudes. We know from our Same Chance report within the autism community this year that 83% of our community felt they needed to change who they were in day-to-day life in order to gain acceptance within Ireland. And 73% felt they didn't have the same chance to demonstrate their strengths within the community. We also did an attitudes to autism poll to understand how the public perceived autistic people and autistic identity. Concerningly, 57% of the Irish public say that if you can't sit still and stay quiet, you shouldn't go to a cinema or a theatre. We have a reality where 27% of people said that the most reliable source of information on autism was either from news media or indeed from social media, and yet just 10% of the autistic community felt that that was an accurate source of information. So we can, while those are specific insights from the autism community, I know there'll be shared challenges across so many disabled communities in Ireland. So this afternoon we have a packed agenda of speakers who are going to cover a whole range of topics within this agenda item. There's bios in your pack, so I'm just going to briefly introduce each speaker. So we have Niamh Daffy, who is the Inclusive Tourism Manager for Fáilte Ireland. We have Elaine Grehan, who's the Advocacy Services Manager for the Irish Deaf Society. We have Terri Sweeney Meade, who's the Assistant Principal Architect with the National Monuments, Historic Properties and Capital Works Delivery Office in the Office of Public Works. And we have Elaine McSherry, who is a Senior Programme Coordinator, Designer and Researcher and Lecturer at University College Cork. And we have Louise McLoughlin, who's Director of Compliance and Complaints, Broadcasting and Video on Demand Services with Coimisiún Meán. So I'm afraid I have the job of being the baddie, because I know we have a highly experienced panel today who could share so much information with us, but we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to ask questions and to contribute to the discussion, both those who are in the room with us today and those who are joining us online. So we're going to have to ask to keep everyone tightly to the 8 minutes, which you'll see on the screen in front of us, so my apologies in advance if I have to interject. But without further ado, I'm delighted to invite Niamh to kickstart the session.
Thanks very much, Adam. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to join today's event to share with you an update on Fáilte Ireland's work, specifically in the area of accessible and inclusive tourism. And I would like to first and foremost just thank the National Disability Authority for the invitation to join today's event and share some of our work. Fáilte Ireland, for some of you who may not know, is a national tourism organisation responsible for supporting the development and delivery of tourism within Ireland, with the ultimate aim of making our country a great place to visit and explore. Last year, I had the privilege of joining Fáilte Ireland, taking up the position of manager of a newly established inclusive tourism team. The team is responsible for ensuring our world-famous destination, products and services are accessible to all. And over the past year, we have been working with a number of our colleagues across the organisation to embed the accessibility, inclusion and universal design principles into everything that we do. Everyone deserves the opportunity to explore, discover and enjoy the world around them. And for that reason, all tourism businesses should aim to be universally accessible, providing barrier-free tourism experiences. Fáilte Ireland is committed to supporting the development and delivery of exceptional and inclusive visitor experiences, and in doing so, we will wholeheartedly ensure we listen, we understand and we co-create a tourism experience that is welcome to all visitors. With a vision for Ireland to be a leading accessible and inclusive tourism destination, I would like to share with you some developments that we have been working on over the past year. We have just finished the production of a co-designed video which shares individual personal stories highlighting the importance of each stage of the visitor journey being accessible. This particular video will be used as part of our educational programme on accessible and inclusive tourism, and I'll share a short clip of this video with you shortly. We have developed 7 new accessible and inclusive tourism training modules to support our industry to enhance their business offerings for everyone, and we have worked with our enterprise development team to do this. A number of modules are currently being rolled out as part of a capital investment programme within the Midlands region, and these modules will be rolled out to national calendar in 2025. We are committed to ensuring accessibility, inclusion and universal design principle criteria is embedded within all funding programmes aimed at enhancing the tourism sector. Our tourism careers team recently launched an inclusive employment campaign highlighting the experiences of people with disabilities working in tourism and the benefits of a diverse workforce from the perspective of an employer. Our digital team are actively working on the implementation of a digital accessibility strategy across all our digital funding programmes. And just as of last week, we have completed a sector mapping analysis to understand current provisions of accessible and inclusive tourism, and the information from this analysis will help inform our future plans to enhancing accessible and inclusive tourism across Ireland. These are just some examples of the work that we have been supporting our colleagues across the organisation to do in the last year. We are currently in the process of developing next year's plans with a continued aim of increasing awareness, building capacity and improving access. In the development of the accessible and inclusive tourism video that I referred to earlier, we learned that information is power. And next year, we aim to launch a new initiative focused on enhancing the provision of accurate, accessible information so that all visitors can make an informed decision before booking and before travelling. However, we will not just stop at information. And Ivor mentioned earlier on, when he spoke about accessible and inclusive tourism, the importance of the visitor journey being joined up. Our work will be focused on impacting and influencing each stage of the visitor journey. In all areas of our work, we will maintain the value of nothing about us without us, knowing that to effectively affect change in making Ireland a leading accessible and inclusive destination, together we can co-create a welcoming tourism experience that not only makes our communities a great place to visit, but actually makes our communities a great place to live. To finish, I would like to share a short video with you. This is a summary message from personal stories that we will be sharing later this year. The video shows a number of individuals participating in tourism experiences such as visiting attractions, enjoying outdoor activities, travelling by train to destinations and staying within hotels. I would like to thank all involved in the production of this video, which I believe has an important message for us all. And we might play that video now if that's okay.
The world knows Ireland for its famous welcome, our spirit of hospitality that's rooted in making everyone feel like they belong. But what does this welcome truly mean? It's not just a friendly smile and a céad míle fáilte. It's ensuring that every visitor has the same opportunity to enjoy our great tourism experiences. Fáilte Ireland recognises the importance of accessible and inclusive tourism to create a tourism destination where no one is left out. We're working to empower our tourism industry, to put Ireland on the map as a leading accessible and inclusive tourism destination. To achieve this vision, it's important to understand the experiences of people living with a disability, older people, and visitors who require support with access. Together, we can co-create welcoming tourism experiences that not only make our communities a great place to visit, but make them great places to live in too. Navigating the world for people living with disabilities or individuals with specific access needs can be challenging. To deliver a truly accessible and inclusive tourism experience, every part of the visitor journey must be joined up and accessible. From planning a trip to travelling to the destination, accessing accommodation and enjoying different tourism experiences, each part of the journey must link together like a seamless chain of services. And across every part of the journey, customer service and staff training are key to an accessible and inclusive welcome. Accessible and inclusive tourism is not just about physical access, it's about access to information. It's not just about travel, it's about training your staff. It's not just about getting to a destination, it's about being able to access accommodation and equally enjoy experiences and activities. Most importantly, it's about people and our communities. It's about all the parts of the visitor journey working together to deliver an inclusive, welcoming, accommodating and memorable customer experience. With 22% of people in Ireland living with a disability and with an ageing population, the understanding, empathy and action of the tourism industry has never been more important. By listening to the voice of the customer, learning from them and seeking feedback, we can make tourism better for everyone. Because when tourism is accessible and inclusive, it benefits everyone, and it's also good for business. Find out more about how you can join the accessible and inclusive tourism movement. Accessible and inclusive tourism, a better place for everyone.
So just to summarise, I have 6 seconds left just to explain that we really want to do this in a co-designed consultation way, and we're very open to working with as many agencies as possible so that we can deliver a destination that's welcoming and accessible to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Niamh, and my thank you as well for the really exciting work that you've just told us about. I'm now delighted to introduce Elaine Grehan, who's the Advocacy Services Manager for the Irish Deaf Society.
We have a little bit of light in my face here at the moment. I can't see the interpreter at the moment, so hopefully we'll be able to get through this. I'm not a shy person. So hello everybody. My name is Elaine Grehan. I think I'm the only deaf person in the audience on the floor at the moment. My role is the Advocacy Manager within the Irish Deaf Society in Cabra. Thank you to the NDA for inviting me here today to their presentation, and I'm going to talk about the cultural identity of deaf members' experiences and the barriers and maybe some solutions. Irish Sign Language itself is an important part of our deaf identity and our culture. We have so many different options to talk about here, a very broad range, but I have a time limit, so I'm going to have to pick some examples. Linked to Article 30. You can see this picture here. Blue is the colour within the colour. This was around ISL Awareness Week and a celebration, and the blue colour itself is representing deaf culture and deaf identity. For deaf culture itself, it's not just about the ability to hear. It's more about the shared values that we have, the traditions, what's important around our visual communication and our storytelling and history. And Irish Sign Language itself is a visual language and a visual space. We communicate using the language. It has its own structure, its own grammar, similar to any other spoken language. Some parts of the community, we have deaf clubs in sports, different events that would be on. Important for deaf people to attend and have that deaf space to make those connections and have that deaf identity within their own life and to feel part of a community and involved. That inclusiveness that we talk about, that inclusiveness in itself is important for other non-deaf users as well. For example, when events are being planned in local areas, to ask deaf people about their experiences and their opinions and concerns about new plans to be progressed. It's important to be inclusive when you're talking about communication in ISL, interpreter provision, the programs of social inclusion. And we do know within public bodies they do have a responsibility under the ISL Act to provide access from the ISL Act 2017, and there are still barriers there in place. Specifically when we talk about private areas. With social inclusion, it means that funding is there from the government and supporting through sign language interpreting services to provide access. For example, to provide private services under the voucher scheme using private solicitors, sporting events, other social events, and that government funding is there. But still there is a limit. We are limited to 5 vouchers per person per year. It is good access, but it still has that limitation. We have another couple of photographs here. We have deaf drama clubs, comedy clubs, art performances, etc., and creative arts. You can see the different events that non-deaf people enjoy that we can now enjoy similar to hearing people. For example, concerts. It's a different experience for a deaf person. It's more visual. We use body language, facial expressions within the language. Irish Sign Language is such an important part of the community and the culture, as I have said. For deaf people to be inclusive in different sporting events, golfing, basketball, futsal, different world events are on, similar to our hearing peers. And for deaf competition in itself all over the world, the same as other hearing teams play in leagues. For the Deaf Olympics, is not the Paralympics, we have a Deaf Olympics itself. It's held every 4 years, and it's for deaf people all over the world to come together against each other in competition. Deaf people do love singing, do love music, do love concerts. Yes, we can't hear, but we do have vests now and technology. If you remember Coldplay recently here in Dublin and Pink, they did provide interpreter provision on the stage and equipment called a subpack that allowed us to feel vibrations through the music. It's not just about music, it's about that inclusiveness in the atmosphere as well. For deaf spaces, they're much more important for deaf people to be able to express themselves, to know locally who we are and who our identity is within our own clubs and hosting our own events. Sometimes for us in deaf spaces, there are no communication barriers. There's no blockages for spaces like this. In barriers that are experienced, ISL itself has been recognised as a language, but there are still not full access provided and inclusiveness in different services. For example, the NDA report says 52% of public services are still not aware of their obligations under the ISL Act to provide access with interpretation. So those barriers are still there. 80% of deaf adults themselves are not able to read, their literacy levels may be affected, and it's important to have access there for their communication provided by the services. Those who use ISL in the classroom, for example for deaf children, there's no must there to provide access for deaf children. The education is part of their lives, it's important for them. Without ISL, they struggle through their education. For social inclusion, again, it's linked to language deprivation without that interaction and can cause future issues for themselves. Time is against me here. For other barriers, we talk about, I have mentioned different events that may be on. Maybe cinema for example, was mentioned before. It's very, very similar with disability barriers for us, for deaf people. The cinema all over the country, you know, you pick a film you want to go and see from 10, but there is no choice for a deaf person. You can go to any film you want within the stream, but we have to go to a program there with subtitling on. So it's very limited access for us. talking about tourism and Tourism Ireland, but again, it's not all over Ireland, that accessibility. Tourism in Galway sometimes isn't free. We don't want to be in free events. We want all the information to be accessible as well in Irish Sign Language. Deaf sports. We have, you can see here on the flashing lights on the bottom, that's for deaf sports. It's a visual communication to tell. It's like you listening to a whistle being blown or a noise being dropped for the start. And that's a visual cue for somebody to start their race, as you see on the ground here in front of this sporting individual. So we have a strategy that promotes inclusiveness of deaf people, and really the attitudes of societies need to change. Training, consultation with deaf people themselves, for that lack of awareness that is out there around that access need. It's important to include deaf people in those consultation processes from the ground up. But if you've seen in the playgrounds, we have the ASL, the alphabets around the country. It's actually the American Sign Language alphabet that's being used, not the ASL alphabet in the playgrounds. So that's an error because there was no discussions and consultation. When we talk about empowering people, we are trying to promote ISL in every school for all children's access in sports, and to have deaf people included in those consultations prior to anything happening and any decisions being made. We want to make sure that all public services have ISL interpretation and also have technology there as well to assist. It's to have that meaningful engagement with deaf people in themselves through that consultation prospects. And the Irish Deaf Society, we are here to be asked and to work with you guys first in policy development, and we're here to support that, to make sure that policy development is inclusive. Moving forward together. So I just want to say thank you very much for your attention. I know we can't get through everything in this crashed time frame, but thank you very much.
Elaine, for that really interesting insight into deaf culture and identity. And I'm now delighted to introduce Terri Sweeney Meade from the Office of Public Works.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really honoured to have been asked to speak today, and I'm very pleased to be here in person. I last spoke at this conference in 2020, which was fully online due to the COVID pandemic. I was sitting in a room by myself, talking to people that I was really not sure if they were listening, but I had this sense of faith that maybe it was okay, but at least we were able to communicate. And it was very difficult time for everybody. It was an insight for me, though, into what it must be like to be isolated and not able to enjoy the world. And that was a very seminal moment for me, because after that I thought, my God, if we ever get out there again, I'm going to do my bit. So I'm going to tell you a little bit today about one of our projects, but I'll give a little bit of context first and explain to you where I'm coming from in terms of the legislative and the international framework. So I'm just going to start the slideshow now, if that's okay. I called this talk Assessing Opportunities at Our National Monuments. My role in National Monuments is Head of Conservation, and in that role we promote greater participation and enjoyment of 760 national monuments, which belong to all of you. Over the last few years I have worked with National Disability Authority on Section 29 and under the auspices of Section 29 of the Disability Act, which is to have access as far as is practicable, which can bring its own challenges. But I think we have to push ourselves more and make sure that we think of ourselves as far as is practical, not being a stop, but that it's a leap, that is the starting point. So I feel that the stage is now set so that we can all contribute to co-designed solutions and an inclusive approach going forward. I highlighted in blue the Article 30 aspects that we're focusing on in OPW at the moment, which is to be looking at virtual and physical access to our heritage sites. And in recent communications with Niamh Daffy, we had a workshop in Athlone, and they gave us some insights into how we might include the experience under 5 areas of opportunity, which is listed below in the little bullet points. So that would be planning of the trip, having accurate information and advice, and knowing what is possible in terms of opening hours, having arrival and a ticketing experience that is intuitive and that the staff are trained, and that the site itself, that you get as full an experience as possible, that there are ancillary facilities at the site which don't inhibit your enjoyment of the day and that are just there and appropriate, and that on your departure you have a really good feeling that you have explored and enjoyed the cultural asset, as is your right, to the fullest of your ability to be whatever aspect of it that you were looking for, that somehow that you feel that has been addressed, and where it hasn't been addressed, that you get the opportunity for meaningful feedback options, not just, oh, well, you know, maybe they'll improve it again. No, we want you to tell us how to improve it, and that we will have a way of logging that and addressing it. I won't go into this now, but in Article 30, there is a specific piece there about the monuments under Section 1C. So it's to enjoy access to places for cultural performances or services such as theatres, museums, cinemas, libraries and tourism service. And as far as possible, this is the bit that I want to push, enjoy access to monuments. I think we need to go further than that. We want to enjoy monuments and sites of national culture importance. Everybody. Again, I think these slides will be made available, but I've highlighted what our obligations are under Section 29 of the Disability Act, which highlights that a heritage site or building, that it is covered by the Act, and that a protected structure is covered by the Act, and a national park is covered by the Act, and the national monuments are covered under Section 3A. So, I just wanted to mention that this was also highlighted in Project Ireland 2040 under Section 7, and it is again my blue highlight, where I'm talking about that the plans for investment in culture is recognise that high quality infrastructure is critical for a vibrant and culture and heritage sector, and that we have to be mindful that 2040 is not that far away, in that to set up a lot of these things, one has to start planning for them now. We have 716 national monuments that we look after for you, and I have highlighted the challenges there. Again, we're working towards improving those, but I have to mention the initiative under the Just Transition, which I think is going to be a game changer in terms of how we approach access to national monuments in the future, and it will act as a pilot scheme for other projects. One project to bring to your attention is that we have made some co-designed and collaborative interventions at one national monument, which is Ormond Castle in Cork on Shore in County Tipperary. And that has been on the basis of a positive co-designed adaptive approach by all parties. I look after a universal access budget on behalf of Assistant Secretary Rosemary Collier, and we go through a series of moves under the legislative framework to make improvements as far as possible, and that they are verified by professional assessors, and that they are then put together in a way that are inclusive, and that people have been consulted at the design basis, at the design stage and all the way through. The case study that I want to tell you about, even though I have only 46 seconds left, is Trim, County Meath. We are looking at the moment at the market house. We have looked at different aspects of the site, which is extraordinary. And we're hoping to convert the market house into an inclusive visitor experience, which will showcase what the options are in terms of interpretation and obviously the options for access to the monument. We have looked at how we can do this, and the project is underway, but we have enriched it by including as many stakeholders as possible, and there are just some of the visual images of it. I just wanted to say that Trim Market House was burnt down in 1920, and it has been in use as a dance hall, has other uses over the years, and we want to try and build the story back up because it now has a new opportunity to provide a very important facility for everybody, and that it will be very much maybe a generator and a catalyst for the new approach that we want to make to our heritage and inclusivity being at the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Terri, and great to hear about that case study in Trim as well. I'm now delighted to invite Eleanor McSherry from UCC to speak to us.
Hi, I'm online. Hi, my name is Eleanor McSherry, and I'm a senior program coordinator and lecturer and program designer at Adult Continuing Education at University College Cork. I'm also autistic, and I'm a carer for an autistic son. I have taught, and my area of research is neurodiversity, autism, disability studies, advocacy, film and creative writing. I was until recently the head of autism studies at UCC, and now I create programs for industry with UCC. I have 44 years working in the arts and creative sector. I've been a freelance journalist, but I've also worked in the voluntary sector in disability and working with carers as an advocate. And we had a national charity for 10 years that helped 57,000 families across Ireland. We don't have it anymore, unfortunately, but we did an awful lot of really good work with groups. But what I want to share with you today is my work at UCC, which has offered me an absolute massive privilege to be able to create first in the world university accredited courses, to be able to educate people working in the media and the film industry and in the arts and creative industry in how to allow people like me work in their industry. So I have courses, so I work with Screen Ireland, Coimisiún, Meán, the Cultural and Creative Industry SkillNet, the Irish Theatre Institute and Safe to Create. So these are all the banners that I work underneath. So my courses are, I've a cert in continuing professional development in advocacy. So for self-advocates, for people who are working for charities, and to be able to give them a university. It's a short course, it's completely online, and it's completely accessible. Being autistic myself, I wanted to make sure that what we offered was something I could access, or my son could access. We have a cert in continuing professional development in neurodiversity for the screen industry to educate screen industry managers, heads of departments, people working in the broadcast industry and the film industry, to be able to understand and not be afraid to give jobs to people who are neurodivergent. A certain continuing professional development, neurodiversity in the arts and creative industries. Again, these are all short courses and they're completely online and completely accessible. Certain continuing professional development and wellbeing coordination for the arts and creative industry, so that people who are working in the industry are protected and looked after. And it's a brand new role internationally. And also the last one is a cert in continuing professional development and neurodiversity in the workplace. So any workplace would be neuro-inclusive, and to be able to understand what neurodiversity is. Neurodiversity is a sociological concept that came around in the late 1990s. And it came out of the autistic rights movement and the social model of disability, but it covers many neurotypes like mental health, Tourette's syndrome, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, and any kind of neurodifference is covered underneath it. And it's moving away from that idea of disability more towards what do I need to be supported and not to be labelled. Now, we know that we still need to be labelled in order to get the help that we need medically, but also to be able to be a part of a community. I don't want to be medically labelled outside of that hospital. So that's what I'm trying to do, is to create a fantastic educational space where neurodivergent people and people from industry can work together to create a more inclusive, neuro-inclusive workspace. I spent a lot of time preparing my son for the world. Now I want to prepare the world for my son. We spend a lot of time educating our children who have disabilities within schools to be able to fit into a world that's just not prepared for them. So I want to reverse that and say, well, I know who I am. I'm neurodivergent. I'm proud of who I am. I know what the difference I have. So you need to understand me, and to reverse that so that we educate the world rather than the world telling us that we have to fit into it. You know, and it's to change that attitude and to rip down those barriers. So I'm currently working on some fantastic projects with the European Union's EDI committee. We're creating a neurodiversity toolkit for international, or for the European broadcasters. I'm working with Screen Northern Ireland, Teach Cahir, RTE, and other private commercial companies. We're working with Animation Ireland. And we have all of these fantastic mix of people who are willing to make a change. And this has always been our problem, is that there hasn't been the will to make the change. Now we've political will on our side, and we also have the will from broadcasters and from film companies. So I grabbed that opportunity as an autistic person, having worked in the industry, and the industry having let me down so many times, to make those changes. Most of my team, actually all of my team on most of those courses, are neurodivergent. So we're not only just saying it, we're being it. I'm also on the Coimisiún Meán, working on their Gender Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Steering Committee. And we are very, very lucky. We have 2 neurodivergent people who are on that committee, who are there to give a voice to a community that doesn't hear. But I've also worked so long with the disability community. I'm making sure that your voice is also heard, because getting that opportunity is fantastic. But also working in the industry, I bring a wealth of experience that I hope will make a change and be a change. 26% of our population are disabled, or identify as disabled. 4% of that are neurodivergent. And then if you look at how many carers we have, you can double that again. So 50% of our population are involved with disability. And there was one of the, and I never can remember his name, I think it wasn't Stuart Hall, but one of the disability rights movement people way back in 1979 said, if you're lucky to live long enough, you'll be disabled in some shape or form. So if we create policy for that eventuality, then everybody has skinny in the game. Everybody will understand that at some stage in their life, they will be disabled. And then we'll see it as something, as an opportunity to change our world from being ableist, which is what it is at the moment. You know, and our representation in television and in film is very, very poor. For example, we had one autistic character in all of television drama since the birth of television in Ireland. That's shocking. That's absolutely shocking. I'm just hoping to play a very, very small part in changing that. And this is has become my life's work. And hopefully this will bring about change. And while the will is there, hopefully in the next couple of years, we'll see this come to fruition. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Eleanor, and congratulations on that really interesting work that you're doing, and perhaps we'll get to explore it a little bit further when we come to the Q&A. Finally, but not least, I'm delighted to come to Louise McLoughlin from Coimisiún Meán.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you to the NDA for inviting Coimisiún Meán to speak here today. Pleased to be here to tell you a little bit about the work that Coimisiún Meán does to support the rights of persons with disabilities to take part on an equal basis in cultural life, particularly in relation to enjoying access to programmings in accessible formats. So I want to talk a little bit about Coimisiún Meán and who we are and what we do and what our role is in relation to accessibility, and what we've learned from what has happened in the past and how, from our engagement with people who rely on access services to watch television, and how that learning is informing what we're doing now and what we're going to be doing in the future. So Coimisiún Meán is Ireland's media regulator. It was established in March 2023, so we're just 18 months old at this point. We took over from the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland, and our remit now covers not just broadcasters, but also video on demand providers and online platforms who are established in Ireland, but who may have services across all of Europe. Our vision is for a thriving, diverse, creative, safe and trusted media landscape. And our responsibilities are around overseeing funding and development of the wider media sector in Ireland, regulating broadcasting and video on demand services, and developing and enforcing the online safety framework for all of Europe. What we aim to achieve here is to have an accessible media that reflects and shapes who we are as a society, and one that promotes the values of justice, equality, diversity and inclusion. So our role in relation to accessibility is twofold, really. We have a regulatory side and a media development side. On the media development side, we fund content through our Sound and Vision funding scheme, and we have mandatory obligations on that funded content to be subtitled and to carry those subtitles on every broadcast. We also have mandatory ISL and audio description for dramas or children's programmings, and we'll be looking to enhance those mandatory requirements in the next iteration of our Sound and Vision funding scheme. We also, as mentioned by Eleanor, have a 3-year gender equality, diversity and inclusion strategy, and this is supporting Irish media services to plan and deliver a range of initiatives to foster a more representative and accessible media landscape, and this spans matters covering workplace, culture, representation, engagement and development. So I want to focus really on the regulatory side because I can't cover it all in 8 minutes. So I'll talk about the rules that we have in place in relation to subtitling, ISL and audio description for television broadcasters. So our power to set those rules is set out in European and national legislation. So the Audiovisual Media Services Directive requires that Ireland, as one of the member states, continuously and progressively makes more that TV and VOD services are made continuously and progressively more accessible to people with disabilities through proportionate measures. And those providers of those services must prepare plans and report to national regulatory authorities on those measures. Our national legislation, the Broadcasting Act 2009, requires Coimisiún Meán to set the rules in relation to how television and video on demand providers take steps to promote the understanding and enjoyment of programmes by people who are deaf or hard of hearing and people who are blind or visually impaired. And this is through the provision of ISL, subtitling or audio description. And we are permitted to set quotas or targets for that. And then underpinning that as well, we have the Irish Sign Language Act, which requires broadcasters to adhere to the principles of equality, dignity and respect in the promotion and provision of those services. So the access rules, what are they? They're for television. They set percentage targets of programming that must carry each of those access services. They provide guidance on the quality standards that apply to those services. And it requires broadcasters to promote the access services on their listings and through the use of standard symbols, to consult with people who use those services at least once per year, and to appoint an access liaison officer to deal with any queries. The access principles that underpin it are access, making things available to people so that they can enjoy the programming, excellence in the standards that they apply, incremental progression, which means that the targets that will be set will increase incrementally over time, and responsiveness. So the broadcasters are required to be responsive to the needs of people who rely on those access services. So in our work, we have a role in monitoring compliance and enforcing those rules. We request reports from broadcasters, we assess programme content, but most importantly, we engage with what we have named as our user consultative panels, which are panels of members who are made up of people who use access services, DPROs, and representatives of representative or advocacy groups. So we have one group for people who rely on ISL or subtitling, and another panel for people who use audio description. And we engage with those user consultative panels to understand what their experience is in using those access services. We meet with the broadcasters annually, and we report annually on their performance against those rules. What we've learned, there are issues. So in terms of ISL provision, we know that from our engagement with users, the scheduling of programming with ISL is happening too much in the middle of the night when people aren't watching. And it's on repeat programming as well. And the NDA's own report on the implementation of the ISL Act recommended as well that there needs to be a monitoring of the quality of ISL provision as well. In relation to subtitling, quality. Quality is the main issue that we're hearing is the problem, meaning that if the quality of the subtitling isn't good enough, people can't understand and enjoy the programming. Also, our monitoring is what we're hearing from users is not identifying this substandard provision, and that there's a lack of responsiveness from broadcasters when these issues are being complained about. From broadcasters, we know that they're saying that the quality issues can sometimes actually be related to the device or the platform, and it's not necessarily the quality of the subtitlings they are preparing and transmitting. So, what are we doing? So over the last 18 months of Coimisiún Meán's existence, we've been revising our rules for television and preparing new rules for video on demand, the first set of rules. We're continuing the incremental increases in the percentage targets. We've changed the calculation of Irish Sign Language so that overnight provision in the middle of the night doesn't count towards their targets. And broadcasters and VOD providers are now going to be responsible for preparing annual accessibility action plans that set out the measures they're going to put in place to ensure that they are, how they're ensuring quality standards and how they're promoting those services, and a mechanism for complaints. I haven't quite got to it, but we have a new complaint handling system as well. So there's a statutory complaint handling system. So where complaints weren't handled responsibly by the broadcasters, there's now obligations on them to do that. There's also obligations on Coimisiún Meán to take complaints. And in our compliance and enforcement work, we're doing pilot research on the quality of standards as well, so we can codify quality standards and better monitor what quality of subtitling and ISL is actually going out on air. And we envisage that will support us in the work we'll be doing under the Accessibility Act. So I'm sorry, I didn't get to quite cover everything there, but if you have any questions or anything you'd like to ask me about, please follow up afterward. I can pass around contact details. Thank you again. Bye.
Thank you so much, Louise, for that insight into your work, and we look forward to seeing how it continues to develop and evolve. We've now come to the questions and answers section of the panel discussion, and I have a number of questions on my iPad here, but I might just start to see, is there any questions in the room to get us started? No? Okay, well, I'll get us warmed up with one that's come in online as a result. So one attendee has asked, the EU recently adopted a directive for a European disability card, which would ensure that disabled people have access to the same discounts and concessions as residents of the EU country they visit. How can we ensure that this positive development serves as an impetus to boost inclusive cultural and tourism practices? Niamh, you might like to respond to that one.
Perfect. I suppose in terms of tourism, it's important that every visitor has the same experience visiting Ireland as they do visiting a number of countries across the EU. So there's probably twofold. One, there's an awareness piece that needs to be brought forward to industry in relation to the entitlements for individuals with disabilities or access requirements. But equally, there's I suppose, looking across EU to see what are the incentives and discounts that are being provided, and have, I suppose, an overarching consultation with people with disabilities, with people who have access requirements to understand how we can best ensure that they can receive the same experience when they're visiting Ireland as they do in any of the EU countries as well.
Thank you so much. And the next question I think we could probably put to Eleanor and Louise, and that is that the last comprehensive study on the representation and portrayal of disabled people in Irish broadcasting was published in 2007. Is it time for a new study, particularly with the recent changes in the media landscape? I might start with you, Eleanor.
I think there is a need for this. We're very poor when it comes to statistics, and I know Coimisiún Meán is making big changes now, and they're taking into consideration how to put those statistics as well. Representation really needs to be seen and be discussed, because we're not discussing it at the moment. I'm doing my PhD looking at autism in television drama, and that's how I knew there was only one character, and I couldn't even get access to that footage. It was really frustrating. We have to do better. We have to start looking at this and be held account. You know, it's not enough for yourself, Adam, and myself working in the same sphere, saying it, nobody listening. Coimisiún Meán are listening, and I know that hopefully in the next couple of months anyway, that they will be bringing statistics to the table. I don't know if the National Disability Authority is going to do another study, but definitely I know that because I've heard that that's on the table.
Thanks, Eleanor. And Louise, would you like to come in on that question as well?
Yeah, it's probably something that we could look at through our gender equality, diversity and inclusion strategy and the work we're doing there as an initiative. I know you're familiar with it, Eleanor. It's not exactly my wheelhouse, but it definitely would be in tune with the direction of travel we're taking in relation to that strategy to improve the representation of people in our media and to ensure that it's reflective of the diversity of everybody in society. So yeah, I think that research is old and it's something we could look at refreshing, possibly in partnership with other groups as well across the media landscape. Thanks, Louise. And the next question is for Elaine, and the user online wants to say, where can we find out more information on the Deaf Olympics, particularly in Team Ireland at the Deaf Olympics? And the person says, I assume there'll be a collaboration between the Irish Deaf Society, the Irish Wheelchair Association, Sport Ireland and other stakeholders going forward.
You can contact Deaf Sports Ireland themselves. There is an organisation specifically around the international involvement of deaf people in sport. And we have the International Deaf Sport Council also for European representation.
Thank you so much.
Just the issue in itself is that the funding is very, very limited from the government actually even providing access for those organisations. You know, there's no PR there. No. So if we had PR, we had funding, PR would be available to actually advertise those organisations.
That would make a big difference. Can we hear finally from Terri? And a question that has come in for you is, what measures, if any, have been taken in the OPW's work to ensure disabled people are part of your processes? I presume they mean design processes.
Yeah, well, we conduct audit assessments of properties where we are looking to improve specific access for the public under Section 25 of the Disability Act 2005. That's an ongoing rolling programme. I currently have over 50 projects underway across public buildings in the entire, across the state. And each one of these is funded under the Universal Access Programme. So we would have, there are a couple of different categories where we have a large demand for a service. In a lot of cases, a lot of the buildings are quite old. We are trying to renovate them, and any renovations we do are done under the basis of compliance with what's called Part M of the technical guidance documents of the building regulations. So we have a compliance requirement there under different categories of access, which include sanitation, access to the reception area, information access from when you come to the car park or your approach to the building. So those are enshrined in law. But then on our rolling programme, then we're doing almost a triage of the buildings that need it most, and then we go forward. Then we have the funding to actually initiate proper access accessibility audits, and these are done by various companies. We do some of them in-house as well, and then that sets out, this is done in an inclusive way, so this is not just somebody going around with a clipboard. It's inclusive with the people, the end users of the building, members of the public, or feedback we would have gotten, say, from people coming to us. And then we would also then take a decision on the basis of value for money, go to tender, and initiate the works in as expedient fashion as possible. So that's a rolling programme. So 50 projects are under development and 25 are on site across the country at the moment.
Thank you so much, and a huge thank you to our panel, to Eleanor, to Niamh, to Terri, to Elaine and to Louise. And thank you for your questions and time, and we'll pass back over to Aideen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam, and to all the panellists, and a special congratulations to Adam for almost bringing us back on time, which was heroically done. You might have been the last panel of the day, but you covered a huge amount of ground, and again, lots of insightful and very interesting contributions there.